I'm Chris. Most of you know me, but if you're new, then I'm Chris. I want to give you a really warm welcome to this evening's well-being webinar, so the first of its kind for us. I'm one of the leaders at Beacon Church, and we're putting this webinar together because we recognise that in the current circumstances, some of us are struggling with being in lockdown, or we're worrying about the pandemic, or whatever. And either that, or we know people who are finding it really tough, and we, you or I, want to understand better how we might help and support them through things. So whether you are part of Beacon Church or just visiting us for the webinar, we're really, really, really pleased to have you along, and I hope that you find it helpful. As a church, we believe that God is absolutely interested in our well-being, our total well-being, our physical, mental and spiritual well-being, and he longs to share his love for us in all circumstances, even in the middle of a pandemic. I've found the Psalms are a really great place to go to look. So in the Bible, the book of Psalms is a really great place to go to look to find God's comfort, but also for the reality of human feelings, because the writers of Psalms, they express themselves, their hopes and their disappointments as well. Got a few verses just want to share with you. So Psalm 36, verses 7 to 9 says this. It says, "How priceless is your unfailing love, O God. People take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house. You give them drink from your river of delights. For with you is the fountain of life, and in your light we see light." And that's just real picture language. That's picture language that demonstrates to us that God's love never fails. How priceless is your unfailing love. That he provides a place of refuge. People take refuge in the shadow of your wings. And he will sustain and refresh our spirit. We can feast on the abundance of his house and drink from his river and be refreshed and sustained. But even if we know this, even if we know all that about God, it doesn't mean that we always feel fine. I like it. I love it on our website, the Beacon Church website, the wellbeing page. It says in really large letters, it says, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. And I think that's something that one of our speakers, Ruth, might come back to. See, the Psalms also reflect that truth, that it's okay not to be okay. David, who wrote in Psalm 42, he says this repeatedly. He writes, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me?" That was the recognition of how he was feeling. And he says it time and time again. "Why, oh my soul, are you downcast? Why are you so disturbed within me?" And if that's your experience as well, if that's your experience too, we hope that you will find some support through this webinar. And I should say at this stage that me, Chrissy, and the speakers, we're not here necessarily as experts, and we're not here as professional healthcare providers either. And if you've joined the call and you're in a really desperate place and you need urgent support, then I would urge you, you need to contact 111 and get that support now, because that's not what we're going to be able to provide at this minute. Hopefully you want to stay with us and you'll be with us. And as we do that, I hope that you will find support and help. So let me just map out what we're going to do. We're going to have a short presentation from a lady called Ruth Rice, who's zoomed in for us. Ruth is director of something called Renew Wellbeing, and that's a national charity helping churches seeing wellbeing renewed locally, by setting up quiet shared spaces, again, where it's okay to not be okay. So Ruth lives in Nottingham, and she set up this charity herself, and she set up the charity when leading a local Baptist church. And in response, she says, to a season of mental and emotional ill health in her own life, and in response to what she was seeing in others in her local community. So Ruth comes from a place of experience, and a place of experiencing herself in her own life, and in setting up this charity to help and support people in their well-being. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're going to say, Ruth. Then after Ruth's short presentation, we're going to have a discussion, or a question and answer session, where Ruth will be on the panel, and joined on the panel by Duncan Leake. So Duncan is one of the elders from our church, the Beacon Church. He's a retired Church of England minister and an elder at the Beacon Church. Before being ordained, he was actually a teacher and lecturer, and after postgraduate studies, he spent around 10 years supporting the learning of adults who faced a wide range of personal challenges. So again, Duncan's got a wealth of experience. And then we've got Rosie, who's going to join us on the panel. Rosie's a member of Beacon Church and a mental health nurse. She's worked for many years across a range of specialties, including adults experiencing severe and enduring mental illness. She's worked with survivors of sexual abuse, been part of a prison in reach team, and part of a mental health crisis team. She's got lots of experience. She's worked with a child and adolescent mental health team, and she's absolutely passionate about mental health care and emotional well-being, and particularly in young people. So you can see we've got people coming from different backgrounds and different experiences. So without any further ado or introduction from me, I'm going to pass over to Ruth, and really welcome, Ruth, and thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Well, it's lovely to be with you. I had a bout of mental and emotional ill health myself about 12 years ago. I was a teacher for about 20 years, and I loved it. I loved every single day of it. I wasn't a moany teacher. I really, really enjoyed it. What I didn't do was look after myself very well. So I had times when I was not well, and I would just keep going to work. I didn't want to take any time off because I was a Christian, and Christians can do this stuff, you know. I was also leading in the local church. I've got 3 kids and a husband, and I was like living it large. And then about 12 years ago, like the bottom fell out of my world, and I just couldn't get out of bed at all. I remember the day that I thought, oh gosh, I don't think I'm very well. And I was a Christian leader at the time, so let's put this in context. A teacher, 3 kids, doing the stuff. And I was in the kitchen trying to decide what to have for tea, and it was just too much for me. It was like the final straw of a lot of straws. And I can see myself now sliding down the work surface in the kitchen, big tears running down my face, and completely unable to form a sentence to work out what to do. Took to my bed. I'd lost my voice, by the way, at this point, and it wasn't coming back, and it was like a physical symptom of mental stress, I think. I took to my bed, and the only thing I could do was watch reruns of Dallas. That's how bad I was. I mean, that wasn't good the first time round. It certainly wasn't good on a rerun. And I was thinking, I don't think I'm very well here, but still didn't want to go to the doctor and say, I think I'm having a breakdown, because I was thinking, I'm a Christian, you know, I'm a Christian leader. I should know how to do this. I should just pray a bit more. I should just be, you know, the shoulds. So it took me a very long time to ask for any help. Long story short, I never did end up going back to teaching. I just couldn't manage it again, and that was a big sadness for me. Weirdly, did end up leading a church. What was that about? But it meant that the things I had learned during a year when I wasn't well, and it was only a year, and I know that for some people, their journey with mental and emotional challenges is lifetime, you know, length. It's long. And I feel like my little dip into feeling like the world had disappeared from underneath me. I mean, like God had disappeared. I couldn't feel anything at all. It was like darkness there. And it felt long and horrible at the time. And I could go back there at any minute if I don't look after myself. So one of the things that helped me, and I have to tell you, and don't hear me wrong on this, one of the things that didn't help was church. So I love my church. I went on to lead this church, but I did find it tricky to be with lots of people. I found it hard to go into a room where everybody cared so much about me. They want to pat me and pray for me. I called it guerrilla praying. It was like, I didn't ask you to. And it was like, actually, everybody wanted me to be well. And they'd ask things like, are you okay now? How are you now? And if you've been there, you'll know that's a really hard question to answer. And I just would feel like I can't go then. I have to stay away because I don't have any answers for you. And what I needed was a place where I could just sidle in, not be okay, people just accept me for who I was. And for all that, they are lovely, lovely folk, but for all the right reasons, probably did all the wrong things. And I was aware that whenever I was sneaking out of church early, the car park was full of people who also couldn't bear to be in there. And I thought, gosh, there's like this shadow world where people's mental health is really poor. And I hadn't even noticed until I dipped in there. So the statistics would be 1 in 4 people have got some diagnosed mental illness at any point in their life. I think it is more than that. And I also think now it certainly will be. I think there are people who didn't feel anxious before. We are living through a global pandemic. The world has shifted on its axis. Anxiety and depression. I lost a friend this week, and I'm desperately sad about it. And it is and it's not going to be easy to do proper mourning and grieving because we can't be together and we can't have funerals. And so bringing you back to where I was at, one of the few things that helped me was first cup of coffee in the morning, holding it in my hands, and this cup like represented my life in God's hands, and I would sit myself still until I'd finished it and go, there is a God and it isn't me, and the world will still spin on its axis if I can't do anything. And weirdly, that practice 12 years ago is still my habit and practice today. And Chris talked about the Psalms earlier. I now take a Psalm a week, and I take a little phrase from a Psalm. So this week it is, may his peace be within you. May his peace be within me. And I meditate on it. So I'm sorry if you think meditation's a bit weird and Eastern. I don't. I think it's been there since the creation and foundations of the world. And it's just about choosing what to chew over in our heads, our minds, our hearts, until it gets a bit deeper. So I'd take my cup, and I'd hold the cup in my hands. That's my definition of well-being, that this is my life, empty or full, broken or not. I'm held by a bigger story. I'm held by a God who loves me. That's a kind of visual image for me. And then every time I'd pick up a cup during the day, I would remind myself of the meditation of the day. And it began to bring me some peace, to bring me to my breathing would like start to slow down. And then I also discovered there were quieter rhythms of prayer. So prayer is a big part of my recovery. So that's why I'm talking about it a bit with you. So I would do a psalm in the morning, pray the Lord's Prayer at lunchtime, and then at the end of the day, rewind the day with God and do what's called the prayer of examine. And I found that to be so helpful. But I'm doing all of this on my own because I couldn't, because being with larger groups of people was too much. So as I began to come back to health, and then I was ending up leading the church, I thought, wouldn't it be great if, as a church, what we could offer is a still place, a quiet place where you could get together, look after yourself, do some hobbies, because the other thing I'd forgotten to do was hobbies. So I found out I quite like painting stones and crochet, not at the same time, obviously, but things that were just like creative and lovely. I was thinking church was a hobby. It's not, it's who you are. You need something that sort of slows you down, and it's just because you're human. So so what we did was we opened a little space. I'll show you actually if I can get my screen shared. What we thought we'd do is we'd open a little space that was like a cafe, but actually just small and quiet and more like a shared front room. So it's not an actual cafe. It was operating like a shared front room. And the rule was bring a hobby, share a hobby. Everyone has got mental health, all of us, whether it's good or bad. So we've all got habits of well-being. So bring what you would do at home and do it together if you would like to. And then we had a prayer space, and we had the prayer space open at the same time as the cafe space. And the cafe space was any faith and none, no proselytizing, just come if you're human. And then the prayer space was you can use this prayer space whenever you like, and we'll gather 3 times during the session and pray. And then weirdly, people loved it. It was like, there was such a lot of life in it, because we weren't saying to people, come and we'll fix your mental health, because actually I don't think, I certainly couldn't offer that. what we were saying was, come and we'll share our experience of well-being. So just sharing this screen with you, if you just excuse me a tick, I will just show you a couple of pics. There we go. So Renew Wellbeing is the name of the charity that we set up. So at first it was one cafe in Nottingham, and by the time we shut the doors on the cafes, we had 53 cafes, which was great. And now there's lots of churches wanting to set these up, quiet shared spaces. I'm not going to pause on that one too long, just to show you these 5 ways to well-being. So this is what the New Economics Foundation uses, and lots of mental health teams use, and we use. These are ways to help with your well-being: connecting, getting active, taking notice, keeping learning, and giving. I think those are good ways for the church to get involved, good ways for me to get involved in helping with my well-being. The seesaw at the top of this slide, I do not like. So this is a definition from a medical journal saying that your well-being, you find it if you just balance your resources and your challenges. Now, the reason I don't like it is because on the resources end of my seesaw was the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and all the resources of heaven, and I still got out of balance. So actually, I think that's too simplistic. I think well-being is like, well, I think it's a translation of the word shalom, peace. I think it's something deeper. I don't think it means being well. So therefore, we can accept each other even when we're not well. So this is us being present. This is in St Giles in Northampton, actually, this cafe. It can be in a church building. It doesn't have to be in a pretty tea shop. We've got ours in Nottingham in a pretty tea shop. I stopped showing that picture because it looks a bit too nice and there's too much cake. This is just a church building. Set up some hobbies, bring a hobby, share a hobby, 5 ways to well-being. Anyone can teach anyone else a hobby as well. We've got furniture restoration, jigsaws, bit of colouring in, all sorts, anything people fancy doing. We partner with local mental health services. You find a partner, lady with the curly hair called Rachel, works for the council, turns up at our cafe every week, sits at the table, gives us advice off the record, and it means we can not try and give people advice. We're not going to try and fix anyone. We're not going to even pray for people or give counselling in this space, and I'll explain why in a minute. We're just going to show up and be human together. It's kind of what people are asking for. And then we're going to be prayerful. And again, this is an option for people. You don't have to come to the prayer times, but we're not hiding it away in a church service. We're just sticking it right there next to the cafe. Now, that lady who I showed you earlier, she's an atheist who works with us, loves our prayer room. She's a rubbish atheist, great lady. And she thinks that actually the prayerful habits are what has been really great for people's well-being. Particularly some of the guys she's brought along who've got really severe diagnoses, having a peaceful space where they can opt in and out of company, but be on their own in company, if you know what I'm saying. So this prayerful space has been amazing. We've now got, like I say, all these cafes all over the country, or we did have, until we had to shut the doors on them all. And that's broken my heart, really, because we had hundreds of people using these spaces. And now we're trying to do it on Zoom, like turn up, do a prayer, bring a hobby, do a prayer at the end. It's all right. It's not brilliant, but it'll be a holding space. And so that's the sort of stuff we're doing, helping people get outdoor and new spaces going, getting ready to open church doors again. And that's how you can get involved. We actually put all our training online, so I'll share that link with you. If you're interested, you're welcome to join in. But just to say, I suppose my story is that I've got no expertise in any sort of mental health stuff, and yet somehow God's used me to set up a mental health charity, which is weird. I suppose all we need to know is how to be honest with ourselves, how to know our own well-being well enough. And so I suppose I'm saying to you, what are your habits of well-being? What helps you? And asking better questions and knowing how to listen to each other's stories, because sometimes we've all got things to learn from each other. Certainly as the church, we've got things to learn, haven't we, from each other as well, outside of the church too, about how to look after ourselves. I definitely think that my faith is really important to that prayer has been really key. But I also think that we've a lot to learn from people who've been doing this journey a long time. The experts in the room are some of you with lived experience who know what this lockdown has felt like, because it's felt like it all your lives. And suddenly more of us understand what it must feel like when you feel very isolated. So there's a new conversation to be had around well-being, and it's great to share this time with you. I think that okay not to be okay motto is fantastic, because I think it's the whole heart of what we believe in the gospel. I don't think any of us are okay, really, and I think God is the big okay around it all. I think his love holds us all, always, and that's what we can enter into together, without a power dynamic that says, you're broken, I'm fixed, and I'd like to fix you. Rather, we can share a conversation about what well-being habits we have, including our prayer habits and our hobbies. So I hope that's been helpful to you, and I can share with you later what the Renew Wellbeing stuff is. I'll type it in actually here, and then. Thank you, Chris.
So what I'm going to do now is going to move to the panel time, where we can start off some discussion. I guess a first question would be, it's unusual, isn't it? Now we're in unusual times, and but I think it's very good what Ruth was saying about we've all at different times got different amounts of well-being or mental health difficulties. But what in the current circumstances, what are the signs? Here's a question for you guys. What are the signs that I might need additional support, or I'm beginning to fall away in my mental health or my mental well-being? Is there anything that one of you three would like to come back to me with that? What are the first signs that you might anticipate?
I think we're living in a very, very strange time, and we're all coping with it in different ways, and how you're coping with it, how I'm coping with it, we're not wrong, we're just different. Some people will see this as an opportunity to get their garden finished. Some folks will be avoiding, quite happily not going to work because they don't like their job, and they're perhaps using it to get their CV up to scratch, ready to move on. Other folks will be living in a situation that's not at all safe. If there's domestic abuse at home, people are going to be very lonely. Perhaps you're a carer for an elderly person, perhaps you are an elderly person, perhaps you're shielding because you've got a significant health condition, so you need to isolate. So each of us is coming from a very different place, and there's going to be lots of similarities, but I think we all need to respect the journey that the other is on. Signs that our mental health isn't so good: if your sleep pattern changes. I think a few of us can admit to a duvet day over the last few weeks, and an occasional duvet day is absolutely fine. Every day can't be a duvet day. If it is, if you haven't got the energy and the motivation and the will to get yourself washed and dressed, there's something wrong, and it's time to get some help. If your appetite changes, I think there's a few of us that have gained a few pounds over the last few weeks. Again, quite normal, we're not as active as usual maybe. But if our appetite significantly increases or wanes off completely, there's symptoms that there's something not right. If you find, I don't know, I'm trying to think of other symptoms now. I'm terrified here, you know.
No, you're doing a great job, Rosie. You can stop whenever you like, and I'll pass it over to someone else.
I think that if you notice that any of these signs are kind of carrying on for more than a few days, it's time to get some help. Chris mentioned 111 right at the beginning. That is probably the best place to start getting advice and help. There's lots of self-help websites out there. I know that we're going to put loads onto the website, but Mind is a fantastic resource. Locally, there's the mental health helpline. There's so many, and again, they're all going to be on the website certainly by tomorrow, if not tonight. But reach out. It really is okay to say I'm not okay. It really is, and the first step to getting help is to acknowledging that and saying, please, I need help.
Great. Good.
It's tricky to know. Sorry, it's tricky to know, isn't it? Because times are so different. That for me, it was uncontrollable crying at really odd times. But like at the moment, I did cry quite a bit because I'm so sad about death and loss and people. You know, I think it's difficult right now to spot what are the signs, because the normal signs, nothing's normal, is it? So I think it's a really good question. And I think, like Rosie says, if in doubt, just ask, because people would rather do something preventative with you than you try and struggle on. I had a friend the other day saying to me, no, but we mustn't bother the hospitals because they've got all the COVID patients. Well, actually, the mental health teams haven't. So you're all right to ring up. You know, if you need to talk to somebody, please do talk to someone. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you want to add anything, Duncan?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, we don't actually need a coronavirus epidemic to feel overwhelmed. We can be overwhelmed, epidemic or not, we can be overwhelmed with all sorts of just ordinary, everyday pressures. And I think that's perhaps important that we just recognise that it doesn't be anything major going on to cause us to feel overwhelmed. It can just be a gradual build-up, We just feel as if we aren't coping. I know one of the things that I'm continuing to learn to do is to not say negative things to myself. You know how we said it's okay not to be okay, and it is, and it's okay to say I'm not okay, but it's not okay to say I'm not okay if the only person I'm saying it to is me. If I'm going around all the time telling myself how useless I am and how I'm a failure and how, Duncan, you're an idiot, that can begin to set up a habit of thinking about ourselves, which can lead us to the sort of the dark places that Ruth was pointing out to us earlier on. So it's probably important to just recognise that often that we get to somewhere quite dark from just small beginnings.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've got some great questions coming in. How about this one? I've got one here. So what would you say to someone who is experiencing questions about their well-being for the very first time during lockdown and are shocked? And I think that's a great question, isn't it? Because there might be people here or people that you know that not normally got any problems with their mental health at the moment, but at the moment are really suddenly shocked by how they're feeling and struggling with stuff. How would you tackle that? What would you say to them? How can we help them?
I think what's really important to remember is these very, very unusual times. And if we can talk to other people about the way we're feeling, what it does is it normalises our reactions, because so many of us are afraid, we're lonely, we're not sure how this is going to end, we're not sure about finances, there's so much going on. Yeah. And I think if we share those fears with other people, it normalizes them, because it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Mm. And if we can remind ourselves that it is such an abnormal situation, that maybe we are all strong, maybe we're strong generally, but there are so many uncertainties. Try homeschooling your kids and dealing with a husband, wife, partner that is a bit of a challenge, and trying to work from home all at the same time, and then worrying maybe when the mortgage payment's going to come from. All of that going on, that's massive. It's huge. Mm-hmm. It really is kind of perfectly normal right now to be feeling very, very out of sorts. But it must feel really weird as well to actually have these sensations, have these worries that you wouldn't normally have, because maybe you normally consider yourself to be a strong person. Please reach out and talk to somebody.
Yeah. And we've developed a new language, particularly in our churches and our groups and our families. And I hope we don't lose that. I hope we don't go back to stiff upper lip, watch for you should just be grateful for, or what I call the top trumps of suffering, which is like, well, actually I've had, and it's just, we can't compare our loss to another person's loss. And there's so much that's bad out there. You almost feel like the thing you're feeling bad about, doesn't matter. So like I say, when I was sliding down the work surfaces and there's nothing wrong, I've got a lovely family and I just can't think what to have for tea. I felt absolutely rubbish and didn't reach out because I didn't have a bad enough story. I mean, actually what you said, Duncan's absolutely right, and blokes find this really hard, and it's why I had to deal with a suicide last week of a friend, and it's horrible that actually people don't feel able to reach out and they feel they're a nuisance. And that if we need to get some language where we're comfortable that other people aren't okay and we don't feel we need to make it okay for them, we just are okay for them to express it. So, you know, just like if you are at a group together, just to get some language going on where you just nod and go, I'm so sorry you're feeling like that, or what's helped you today, or how did you sleep? Did you sleep a bit better? So rather than the great big question, are you okay now, or how are you, a smaller question that people can actually answer can help.
Okay, that's great. And you know, if we can pick up how can we help people through these things, that would be really helpful. Duncan, you've got anything you want to add?
No, I was just thinking there when Ruth mentioned about the question, how are you, that we always ask one another. And it's a pretty useless question, actually. I mean, you can be sitting in the doctor's waiting room and someone comes in and they say, how are you? And they say, I'm fine. It's an automatic response. Maybe if we can think of more constructive questions, you know, like what have you been doing today? Or, you know, what's been good about today? Or whatever. But yeah, try to avoid saying, how are you?
I would say ask people. The reason why the Renew spaces are so lovely is because you get a bit more time to find out what you've been getting wrong. And otherwise you get scared to say anything. You know, you think, I now say to people, what would be the best thing for me to ask you? Like, was that helpful or not? Tell me what's a helpful thing. And the trouble is, a lot of our social contact is it's up here, isn't it? It's a bit shallow. So actually to have a space and a time in the week when it's a bit deeper and it's okay, and you don't have to chat if you don't want to, you can just get on with the jigsaw, but you are going to find out what's a good question by asking people. It's all that, you know, you wouldn't go, you've got a physical health problem. Oh, I better not talk about that then. You go, well, what's wrong? It's okay to talk about our mental and emotional health, but to just not jump in there too much, you know, just ask people, and if they don't want to tell you, they'll say, butt out, I don't want to tell you, but you know, just let's be a bit more normal about it, I think is what I'm saying.
Okay, cool. Great stuff. I've got a good question here. So just recognising that you know, we've got a wide range of folks on this call, and I don't know all of people's backgrounds. I don't know who even some of them are. So we'll have people with a faith, some who are Christians, some without a faith. Here's the question that's that come through. What practical steps are there for dealing with mental health for Christians and non-Christians? What would you say to that? Ruth, do you want to kick off on that one?
Yeah, because actually the whole point is, I don't think God sees us as Christians and non-Christians, and the mental health journey reunites us as human beings with breath in our bodies. And I'd been like one of those, like, oh, let me give you a bag of food and a bag of that. You can't give someone a bag of well-being. And there's nothing wrong with trying to help people, but we've got to get honest and a little bit vulnerable and say, you know, I'm not coping either. What do you do? And so I've learned things from people who I probably patronised before, and across the Christian, non-Christian divide, let's forget that for a minute. Just be human beings. But for some of us with faith, one of the things we will share is, actually, my relationship with God helps. I'll tell you about it if you like. But I'd like to know what helps you too. So that kind of asking and listening and just being honouring of the fact that some people have a different journey. And I would have said before, all you need to do is come to Jesus and he'll make it all right, in a kind of fairly twee way, which was why I was so shocked I had Jesus and I wasn't okay. It's like, I also need to learn how to be a human being and look after myself, and any other human being can teach us that. So like bringing who you are and your faith, but also listening to people who are not people of faith, and just being honouring of each other's stories. Does that make sense? I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate your honesty, which is really valuable. That comes across really well, Ruth. Thank you. Rosie or Duncan, have you got anything you want to add to that?
I think what Ruth is saying about being human, really resonates with me. I mean, the most important thing that we can offer to anybody is just real relationship, just genuine concern, real relationship. I will, all right, go on. At the risk of publicly embarrassing myself, which as I often do, one of the most awful things that I've ever done, and it still makes my flesh creep slightly, is I remember once we met a young man who came to church a long time ago, before I was ever ordained, and he turned up on a Sunday morning. Well, you know, new face in the church. I mean, gosh, practically pounced on him. I can only say that we probably led him through all the 4 points of the gospel and led him to a prayer of commitment. Fantastic, right? And off he goes. And as he disappeared from sight, one of the people I was with turned around and said, what was his name?
No.
And that lives with me. The most important thing is relationship with another child of God, with someone else made in the image of the God who loves us. And the most loving thing we can do is to really intend and want to have a genuine relationship to folk.
It's our little motto, if I may, Duncan, is now someone knows my name, because one of our regulars who first came along, when I eventually she settled into place, said, why do you like this place? And she said, because now someone knows my name. And that lady could go all week and never hear her name spoken. She used to go to the doctors because it was the only time she heard her name said out loud. And so we say, names, not labels. We are not interested in your label. All we want to know is your name. And so you don't need to be anything other than just who you are then.
Great.
Massive.
Great.
I think just to add to that a little bit, it's kind of concurring totally with what you two were saying there, is that when you ask somebody how they are, please take the time to actually listen to what they say. And so we often listen to kind of just say, yeah, okay, fine, rather than listening to actually really hearing what people are saying. And I think it's equally important to say what you want to say as well, for somebody to give you that permission to say, it's okay to chat, I'm going to listen, and drop what you're doing and just actively listen to them, be there. And it doesn't matter what faith or no faith, actually being alongside somebody is worth so much, because it says, I care.
Good, lovely. That's fantastic. I've got a couple of questions that are coming in about how people feel individually, and I'm going to put those out there because I think it might reflect how some other people are feeling. So people are being brave enough and bold enough to say how they feel, and it might be a reflection of how others hear. So here's one question. It says this: when in a stressful period, I carry on calmly, smile, and fill my life with lots of activity, and then break down after the stressful period is over. I'm deeply sad and feel alone right now, but keeping busy, and I'm worried I will break down after COVID is over. How do I prevent this from happening?
I think the fact that you've said that out loud, whoever that is, well done. And it's worth saying that out loud to a good friend, and just beginning whilst we're still in lockdown to unravel that. And if you don't have a good friend, get in touch with the Beacon Church, have a conversation. yourneighbour.org has got a helpline. You can just ring up someone and chat, because don't wait until, I would say that don't wait. If you think you're feeling something and it doesn't feel right, get a conversation going on, I would say.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's helpful. Anything you want to add, Rosie?
Another organisation that can really help before you reach breaking point is Mind. They have a chat forum facility called Elephant, and it's like a squiggle of an elephant, and that's a safe space where you can go to chat to people that understand. So that's the way, if you want to do that privately, I would actually urge, talk to somebody within the church, within your family, a friend, a colleague. Just talk to somebody. Please don't let it build up too much. We're all struggling. We're all going through this, and I think each of us will recognise little bits of what the other is going through. It's really hard. Ruth shared earlier that she'd lost a friend very recently. all our bereavement rituals, they've just been thrown out the window, haven't they? I've lost somebody recently as well. There will be no funeral for us. There will be none of the traditional goodbyes, none of the hugs, none of those things that we do when we lose somebody, because that's all been taken away. And that leaves a huge vacuum, because what do you do with that grief? Where do you put it? What do you do with that fear, the anxiety? How do you deal with all of those worries? And we can all carry it for so long, but it needs to come out. Trying to get it out before you break would be great if you can. Please look at the resources on the site after this, and tomorrow morning when some more are going to be loaded.
Good. Yeah. No, we'll share. So there are resources on the site here, and we'll share that. Also, we'll share Chrissy's email, and if anyone hasn't got anyone they feel that they can talk to, or they would like some support from a pastor within the church, they can email her privately, and she can arrange that. So, it's good to talk to someone. If you've got a friend who's invited you to this, or there's someone that you trust, just talk to them and share it. But if you want someone from the church or the pastoral staff to contact you, Chrissy's just sharing her email address now. So so that's there if they want to pick that up. I've got another personal question here, which is which is really helpful. So this person, again, I've got no idea who it is, says my sleep pattern has taken a real dive, and I'm only getting 5 hours or less a night. And this is bringing negative feelings about myself, which are compounded. How can I pull back from this? So someone who's got real struggle with their sleep pattern, and that's making them negative and causing them problems. Any thoughts or suggestions around that?
Can I offer a practical checklist for sleep?
Right, please.
If you drink alcohol, avoid it. Please reduce it at least. Don't use illicit drugs. Avoid caffeine after about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we have caffeine in tea, which a lot of people don't know. There's caffeine in fizzy drinks. There's caffeine in chocolate. I never listened to that bit. There's caffeine in cheese. Try after about 4 in the afternoon to reduce significantly your caffeine intake. Get some exercise every day. These are kind of pretty basic sort of health things, let alone mental health strategies. Get some exercise each day if you're able to. Try not to overload on the news. There is so much bad news on the news. We'll need to be kept in touch with what's going on, but seriously limit how much you listen to and take in. Before you go to bed, try to have a calm evening. It's better that you watch something, I don't know, light, soft on telly, listen to the gentle music rather than listening to 10 o'clock news and going straight to bed. It's getting more political, it's getting more nasty. Don't listen to it at bedtime because it's not good. And once you go to your bed, don't put the television on in your bedroom. Don't look at your screen, your iPad, your Kindle, your phone. I'm not at all scientific, but there's something in the blue lights in those devices that's a stimulant. I don't know what it is, but it seriously impacts on your sleep. So keep bedroom for sleeping. Try not to eat in your bedroom if you have a choice. Try not to watch telly in your bedroom if you have a choice, so that you associate your bedroom with sleep and rest. If you enjoy a bath, have a bath with scented candles and bubbles and things like that, if that's something that you enjoy. Some people don't. But it's basically looking to calm things down in an evening. If you've got worries, write them down. They're not going to go away. All they're going to do is destroy your sleep. So if you can write them down so that you don't forget them, and you can pick them back up and worry about them again tomorrow if you need to. But sometimes just writing them down actually helps to get them out. So they're all strategies to try.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Rosie. Do you do all that?
I did have very disturbed sleep for a number of years after I'd had the breakdown, and it made me panic that I was having another breakdown. And actually, I think it was a hormonal thing, so I won't go into details. But actually, I tried everything Rosie said, and I'd gone to the doctor, and I got and actually the panic about not sleeping became a thing. And then I'd go to sleep thinking I might wake up, and then I won't be rested enough, and then I might get ill again. And actually, what I found helped was, if I woke up, I got up, I went downstairs. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. It just worked for me. I went downstairs, I made a cup of tea, I watched half an episode of Escape to the Country. That's enough to send you off. I do like it, actually. And then I would do the whole bedtime thing again and go to bed and go. So I actually had my night in 2 goes. And eventually I would think, right, well, I'll go downstairs. I'll just do a few dishes. I'll watch a bit of Escape to the Country and I'll go back to bed again. And then it came to the point where I was sleeping right through the night like a baby. And I thought, oh, who's going to get the dishes done? I was leaving them for the middle of the night. So actually taking the fear out of it, like if I wake up, I will go back to sleep again. But if I lie here, I'm going to get myself in the right tiz. That might not be for you, but for me, it actually helped for me to just lean into it a bit. And if I did too much praying, even, that sounds awful, doesn't it? If I did too much praying, I got into this kind of overthinking it all again. I had to do some really mindless something and then just go back to bed again. So if that's helpful.
I think we talked earlier on about symptoms. If you find that a new symptom is that you're regularly waking at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and that's a repeated pattern, it could be a symptom that we call early morning awakening, and could well be a symptom of depression. So if that's something that carries on, please don't ignore it. Please speak to your GP. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm reminded there's a psalm that says, I lie awake on my bed at night and I meditate on you. And I confess that there have been many, many times when I've lied awake on my bed at night and I haven't felt like meditating at all. And so the last thing I'd want to do is to load anything onto somebody. It's sometimes a good idea just to say to yourself, well, thank you, God, for looking after me. Job done. Just remind ourselves of a truth that we are looked after. I think Rosie's advice is so wise and practical. The other thing that just strikes me is just at the moment, at this time of year, don't panic. Make sure you don't go to bed too late. Don't go and play Halo on the Xbox until sort of 2 o'clock in the morning and then wonder why you can't sleep. But go to bed whatever time you want to go. But if you're awake at 4:30, say, oh, thank you, Lord, that's another day. And just enjoy it. And if you find you need to sleep a bit in the afternoon and you can, well then, chill, really. I think not being anxious, as Ruth says, has got to be the thing.
Okay, great, thank you. Some great, really helpful practical things there. Here's one, which is really interesting question. How do you manage a situation where people in your environment perceive your struggle with well-being as a weakness? So how do you manage a situation where other people who you come across perceive your struggle with well-being as a weakness? Any initial thoughts on that, team?
It's interesting. My husband worked with recovering alcoholics for years, and one of their little mantras was, other people's opinions of me are none of my business. And I've had to learn that one, really learn it, because it mattered to me so much that other people weren't coping with my well-being, that then that would be like, I can't tell them. So actually, there's no easy answer to that one, is there? Better education for people around you, certainly, but we can only be responsible for ourselves, can't we? And actually learning. For me as a Christian, I've got an audience of one and he loves me anyway, whether I'm broken or fixed. And so it's that kind of knowing our value does not depend on what other people think of us is a really important one, I suppose. Okay,
great.
I suppose if regarding mental illness as a weakness, it's nothing like as bad as a failure of compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
Right? Those are real weaknesses. I mean, the truth is that every single one of us is just part of the walking wounded.
Okay, I've got another question. So if someone, this might be for people on this call, or it might be for people that you know, but if you're someone who is shielding or is in that shielded category and is completely stuck at home, how do you protect your mental health? You're not getting any of that interaction that a lot of us are doing by getting out and getting exercise. If you're shielded, how do you protect your mental health? Rosie, is that something you want to kick off with?
Yeah, okay. Loneliness is awful. Some of us are okay with being alone for a while. I'm not sure that any of us would be okay with being lonely, and they're two different things. And it's possible that the question before, actually, where someone is seen as weak for having mental health problems, they may feel very alone and lonely in that household situation. So you're not necessarily on your own to feel lonely. I think if you know somebody that is shielding and can't go out, I think making contact with them is such a lovely, lovely thing to do. It's a small act that would mean so much. Send them a card if you're able to send a bunch of flowers, or drop something on the doorstep and knock and run. If you can kind of reach out to that person, that would be fantastic. And I think for the person that is closed behind the door, I think reaching out as much as you're able. So I think be kind to people. Be really, really kind to people that can't go out, because they're quite vulnerable right now. And if that is you, binge watch something on Netflix. Sort of dig out, you saying Country File or Dallas, whatever it is, whatever you enjoy, kind of watch that. Listen to music, read books. They're all quiet pursuits, aren't they? But I think actually planning to spend your day doing something. There's a little analogy I used with the girls that we worked with the other day, ACE, ACE. So A is activity or action or achieve. So each day try and do something. It might be something very small. It might be getting those dishes washed. It might be finishing off a book. C is connect. Or contact. So reach out to somebody, whether it's writing a letter, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a Zoom meeting, or a chat online via social media, but connect with somebody each day. And then okay. E is to enjoy. So actually, what do you like to do? Do you enjoy gardening? Do you enjoy walking in the limitations that you've got? Enjoy jigsaws, whatever it may be, praying, doing a Bible study, something that you enjoy, because each of those gives you a sense of having achieved something, and that's Great. Really important.
Thanks, Rosie. That's really helpful. And here's your killer question, Duncan. The person who's asking it isn't sure it should be asked, but they wonder why God hasn't taken away their mental health struggles.
Why hasn't God taken away my mental health struggles? Why hasn't God taken away my grief? Why hasn't God taken away my feeling of sadness and loss? Why hasn't God taken away this illness? Why on earth? I might be a vicar, but ultimately the answer to that question is sort of above my pay grade. But one day, the God who loves me will be there to wipe away my tears and to take away my sadness. And in the meantime, the picture that's always in my mind is, if you see a child running around, and in the olden days, we used to run around on hard surfaces, not on nice, soft, bouncy ones in playgrounds, and a child runs around and you fall down and you graze, and the child grazes the knees, and they run to the mum or they run to the dad, and the child has a hug. Just the hug in the middle of all those tears and that pain changes the situation. And I think that's what God can do for us. Mm. It doesn't take away all the pain, doesn't take away the challenge. Knowing that we're loved, when we know that He's walking with us and giving us a hug, that's what makes the difference and helps us to keep on.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you, Duncan. That's a really good thing. 3 members of the team are just if there's one closing thought or one key thing that you would like people to take away from it. I think Duncan might actually have given his, because that would be what I would take away. So what is the golden nugget that you'd like to share, that if people forget everything else that they've heard tonight, what would be a good thing that they could hold on to? Let me just start with Ruth, and that'll give Rosie, time
Ritual,
to think.
it's that. He couldn't love you anymore. He'll never love you any less. You can't earn it. He's got you.
Thank you. Nailed it.
How do I follow that?
Hit the mug, yeah.
Yeah, that is brilliant, Ruth. That's brilliant. Reach out, please. Don't keep it to yourself. Talk to somebody. Just reach out.
Reach out. Great. That's really good. Lovely. Duncan, anything else you want to add?
Don't ever believe the lie that nobody cares about you, because you do.
Thank you. No, so listen, thank you to the team, the 3 people that have contributed so much to that. You've got, you know, lots of experience, and you know, really, I found it really interesting and really helpful just to listen myself. And I've seen other people nodding and laughing as we've shared as well. So look, thank you so much for that. That's been really, really helpful.